15th, 2025 on a Thursday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith, call me Q, and we are on the corner. What up, y'all? We on the corner. We are back at it again, Thursday. Another one of Cozy Corner's late night live streams. Wednesday and Thursday are my later nights. Alright guys, so I'm going to get right into what's on the menu. We're not going to be too late here tonight. I might end up just playing like 3 clips here. But we'll see. I'll move that one over. We'll see. I might end up just playing 3 and save this last one for tomorrow actually. So let's jump in. First up, shout out to Law and Crime Network. P. Diddy on trial. Defense claps back at Cassie. So P. Diddy's defense got a chance to cross-examine Cassie today. We're going to take a look at that. And then we're going to switch gears and jump over to Bill O'Reilly. Shout out to Bill. Putin backs out of peace talks. So here we go. Vladimir Putin backs out of peace talks. Will Trump end birthright citizenship? And we will take a look at that. That was just 2 hours ago. Bill covered that. The P. Diddy trial was about an hour ago. And then we will end with capturing Christianity. Shout out to him. I wasn't ready for Pope Leo XIV's first homily. So we will take a look at that as well. And with that being said, guys, again, welcome to the live stream. Tonight we will be doing more of a newsathon, so that is me more hopping in and out, not so much sitting here with you guys and constantly watching and doing commentary. And we do that for YouTube purposes, because YouTube doesn't always like when you're too political, right? YouTube doesn't like a lot of things. But with that being said, we're gonna make it a little easy on YouTube tonight, and we're gonna watch some news. Gonna catch up on, I think this is day 4 of the P. Diddy trial. Then we're gonna go over to Bill, and we're capturing Christianity. Alright guys, let's jump right in.
Day 4 of Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial got intense in a hurry, as Diddy's ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura faced a blistering cross-examination, with defense lawyers using old love texts and steamy messages to challenge her claims of horrifying abuse. From freak-offs to jealousy to burner phones, it all came out in court today, and I'm going to be speaking with our very own Elizabeth Milner to get the inside scoop, including a major witness who's set to take the stand next. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Webb. The 4th day of testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial turned explosive, as his former girlfriend Cassandra Ventura faced quite aggressive cross-examination about her tumultuous 11-year relationship with Combs. The defense pushed back hard on Ventura's allegations that she was coerced and abused by the fallen mogul, showing jurors old text messages and emails where the two appeared to exchange loving words, even some pretty explicit plans for their so-called freak-offs, raises the question of consent or not. So to give us that up-close and personal account of every single gripping moment that happened inside that courtroom, we're going to bring back on Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who is in that courtroom once again. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. So set the scene for us. What was the atmosphere in that courtroom like today? Was it tense when we're talking about cross-examination? Did it feel different than direct examination?
Can your dentures withstand the force of a golf swing? We're putting Nubia's permanent teeth in 24 hours up against dentures. Which one do you think will come out on top? With Nubia's permanent teeth, you can not only get them fast, but they're strong, they're durable, and they're built to last. Where dentures, they're temporary, they're weak, and they're uncomfortable. First up, dentures. Very weak. I think that's all that's left. Oh, there's 2. Next up, Nubia's permanent teeth in 24 hours. Boom, baby! Strong, durable, built to last. Take the 60-second quiz to find out.
Yeah, for the most part, this was a day that a lot of us were anticipating. A lot of us were wondering, what is the defense going to have when it comes to this cross-examination? You know, the last couple of days, while Cassie's been under direct examination, to me at least, just kind of watching her tone, watching how she answers these questions, she really kind of seemed very compelling. She felt like a compelling witness. So obviously, the defense's job is going to be to poke holes in this. Did you want to participate in these freak-offs? Did you have a way of helping set these up? Did you initiate wanting these freak-offs in some instances when Diddy was sick, or other instances as well too? And so today was definitely a very highly anticipated day. As far as the tone just in the courtroom, I think a lot of people were just kind of wanting to know what was going to happen next. So as far as just who was inside that courtroom today, it looked a little different than it has, on day one and even a little bit into day two. In that, we had Karen Agnifilo inside that courtroom today. She is obviously married to Mark Agnifilo. You had Diddy's mother, Janice Combs, in the courtroom. His sons, Christian Combs, Quincy Brown, Justin Combs, all came into the courtroom today. Notably, the daughters, again, not inside that courtroom today. Chance's mother, who's been inside that courtroom, also wasn't there today. Neither was Justin's mother inside that courtroom. So it was a little different than we've seen, on prior days, especially for opening statements, as well as even into day two. As far as those who were there to support Cassie, was still the same as it has been the other couple of days she's been testifying. Her husband, Alex Fine, was inside that courtroom. Cassie's brother was inside that courtroom, as well as Cassie's mother and her attorney, Doug Wigter. As far as even when Cassie came into the courtroom today, you would think that maybe she would appear nervous or just a little shaken, depending on what to expect really from what the cross-examination would look like. But she appeared very cool, calm, and collected, just similar to how she has been on the stand these last couple of days. She just walked up to the witness stand. The judge reaffirmed that she is still under oath, and so she just sat there. And even when Ana Maria Escobedo was asking her question, she, for the most part, appeared cool, calm, and collected. Her tone was still the same, even during, as far as comparing it to her direct testimony, where she was very soft-spoken. There were times, she wasn't saying yes or anything like that. Instead, she was saying yep or mm-hmm, and she just appeared, again, very soft-spoken. She appeared that she didn't seem nervous, at least from what I could see of her. Of course, there were some moments where you could kind of feel that she was uncomfortable, especially when it came to these graphic text messages that were being displayed, but she didn't feel comfortable necessarily reading them out loud. And it makes a lot of sense, right? This was, it appeared that these were private messages between people who were dating, people who were together for a years-long period. But just keep in mind, even to now, she is married to somebody else. And, her husband was in that courtroom. And so I could tell that there was a little uncomfy moments when it came to especially some of those graphic tests, or those graphic text messages that were being displayed in court today. But as far as the tone goes, just overall, it appeared just kind of like another day in court. I'm assuming that, Cassie kind of knew what to expect as far as where the defense would go, what type of questions that they would ask her, knowing that they would try to poke holes into her credibility. But again, she appeared cool, calm, and collected while on the stand. No emotional moments or anything like that. No points where she appeared visibly agitated or angry. Just, for the most part, asking clarifying questions. Can you repeat that? Can you ask it a different way? Can you talk about what time frame this was? Oh, I don't remember these text messages. And so that was kind of most of the tone throughout most of the cross-examination today.
Hey everybody, this is a law and crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to this? Yeah. Well, Morgan & Morgan is stepping in to fight to hold these food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they are ready to stand up for the families who deserve justice. So if your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, then visit www.forthepeople.com/food or scan the QR code on screen to learn more. So before we get into the substance of what the cross-examination was about, there are two other groups of people I were curious about how they were reacting throughout the day. How were the jurors reacting during the cross-examination from what you could see? And how was Diddy reacting during the cross-examination by his defense counsel?
Are you really going to miss this?
We do this training once a year. There's 800,000 to 1 million people that'll join us, and it's an opportunity for you at absolutely no cost to figure out how to create a blueprint for what's next in your life. How to be able to be in a position where you could start something or take something you've already got to a whole nother level by learning from the best that exists. Not just us, but to join a group of people we put together for 3 days, 3 hours a day, like a movie each day, but one that'll change your life forever. Click below and get yourself registered. There's no charge, but the experience will be life-changing. You don't want to miss out.
Yeah, May 15th through the 17th, show you how to thrive in this new world. Get the blueprint. Click below. We'll see you there. Don't miss it.
Killing me.
As far as I can see from the jurors today, they seemed at some points a little bored. It seemed at some points they're kind of wondering what's happening next. I think even when the text messages were shown, a lot of them were very much analyzing them. A lot of them had direct focus onto the computer screen in front of them, just so that way they could read all the messages, even the more graphic, sexually explicit messages. I saw there were sometimes some jurors were doing, the tennis match look, where they were either looking at Cassie, who was on the witness stand, then looking at Ana Maria Esteveo while she was asking the questions, kind of doing the back and forth. Meanwhile, some other jurors were just laser focused on Cassie and just what she had to say and how she responded to the cross-examination today. As far as Diddy goes, Diddy, just like every other day, is very much participating in his defense, very much so passing off notes to his defense attorneys to kind of hand over to Esteveo, who was standing up doing the questioning. He very much so was intently looking at either Cassie or the exhibits in front of him, especially when it came to those sexually explicit text messages, or even just the text messages and the emails back and forth with one another. And so just like every other day, Diddy is very much so participating in his defense, because as the defense has pointed out a number of times, that Cassie is a very critical witness to the case. Mark Agnifilo said she is probably the most key witness in this case, somebody that, they wanted to make sure that they were doing a thorough cross-examination of her, because Diddy's life somewhat depends on this, because, they were making the point that he's facing a life sentence if he's convicted, and so they wanted to make sure that they were asking every single question that they needed to ask. Do I think that was necessarily accomplished? I'm sure we'll get to that in just a second, but for the most part, as far as Diddy goes today, he was definitely participating like usual.
Yeah, look, she is the number one witness. What do I mean by that? She's the star witness. She starts at the start of this trial. I believe this case rises and falls with her testimony. She is making up a number of the counts that he's facing right now: racketeering, sex trafficking. Her testimony would help support those, and also help support transportation to engage in prostitution. The prosecution needs her to testify, which is why I believe one of the reasons they want her to testify so early is because she's 8.5 months, 9 months pregnant. They got to make sure she gets on the stand before something happens. Now, you mentioned the text messages. This day was filled with text messages. Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you what we learned about these text messages. I'll leave it to you how graphic you want to get about them, depending upon what the value is, but what were the text messages? What were the value of the text messages? What was the defense doing with these text messages? And by the way, emails too. So communications between Combs and Ventura. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was a lot of messages today, a lot of things that were read inside that courtroom. First, starting off with messages first with Ana Maria Esteveo, asking Cassie, so you love Diddy? She said yes. And he loved you? She said yes. You called him Sean, you knew the real Sean? And Cassie said, can you repeat? And then along the lines answered the question that, she knew the Sean that other people didn't see. When they started getting into the email correspondence and text correspondence, they went all the way back to 2008. One email that said, I'm a very lucky woman, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase this email because it was a lot going on. Cassie said, I'm a very lucky woman. I miss you, and I fly wherever you needed me to. I love you. And then she signed it off, Cass. They showed a 2009 email that Diddy had written to Cassie, and this was the baby girl and the pop email correspondent and nicknames that they had for one another. Diddy said, I love you so much, it makes me cry. And then Cassie responded, you hungry, pop. And so I think what the defense was trying to do, at least with these initial messages, is just kind of show that there was love and there was affection there. But just think about these time frames and these dates. This was around the time that the two had first started dating, and I felt like it kind of played into what she had said under her direct testimony, that she did care about Diddy, that she did love him. She's been very honest about that that she felt like the two were in love, especially at the beginning of her relationship. There was one message from 2010 Cassie wrote, going to sleep, so tomorrow will be faster, and kind of saying, tomorrow will be faster so I can see you soon. Diddy responded, I love you so much. I never knew it could be like this. Cassie responded, I'm so happy. We're so in love. There was another message, this one from the year prior. Cassie saying, I love you so much. It made me feel like I can't wait until we just don't care anymore. And Cassie was pretty much saying that this was because she wanted to be open about the relationship, because the defense was trying to point out that Cassie and Diddy, for about a 2-year period, they weren't as open with their relationship, and that Cassie essentially just wanted to be public. Again, something that kind of corroborated her under direct testimony, where she said that she just, was in love with him and just wanted to be with him at all points, all the time. A lot of just I love you back and forth, again, just kind of trying to establish that these two were in love, that it wasn't forced or fraud or coerced or anything like that. Then we get to a message around August 5th of 2009. Diddy asked, when do you want to freak off? Cassie said, I'm ready to freak off, LOL. Diddy responded, you tell me the date, you choose. And then I'm paraphrasing right here. She had responded, I feel like a Friday would be best. Diddy responded, also paraphrasing here, Friday it is. Maybe we can get Jules here. Jules was an escort that they had used very often in their freak-offs, according to her testimony. He was brought up a number of times, and notably, he was the escort that was...
People everywhere are recommending GoodRx.
My neighbor showed me the app. Tell me to save on my kids' allergy pills.
GoodRx can save you
inside that hotel room during the 2016 Intercontinental Hotel incident. There were other messages that went into, Diddy had a subject line that said, what are you thinking about? And then Cassie responded in a very kind of sexually explicit way that I'm not going to repeat on air. You could definitely feel like I was kind of peeking into what their history was like, especially in those intimate moments, and how the two would correspond about wanting to be with each other in an intimate way. And so a lot of those messages were displayed in front of the jury. The jury saw them. Us in the gallery, we saw these messages as well too. There was a 2009 email that Diddy had wrote to Cassie saying, I want you to feel safe to let go. And Cassie wrote, I like that. I want to give you the same. In order to be more open with the things that we do in bed, I need to feel safe like home. Like, this is my husband, and this is the only man that will ever have this aggressive / sexual side of me. I'm nervous. I'm just the girlfriend that you get your fantasies off with, and that I just don't get that other part. And then she wrote ... anymore, at least. And she kind of, at least to me, in my perspective, appeared a little apprehensive about doing these freak-offs. She was asked by the defense, do you have a fear that you guys wouldn't go public, you guys being Cassie and Diddy? And she said, I guess she thought about this. Again, this is around that 2009 time frame when the two were still kind of under wraps there. But she said that the freak-offs were kind of an integral part of her relationship, and that essentially she just wanted more. There was a part where they had talked about her 21st birthday. Her 21st birthday is pretty important because that was the first time the two had kissed. That's the first time that she had kissed Diddy, because remember, she had met him 2 years prior to that time. She said that this was again at her birthday. Big names, like a name that we had seen in the People and Places list from jury selection. Dallas Austin was at her that birthday party. Britney Spears was at that birthday party, and they were all brought by Diddy. She was asked about her financial situation around that time, and she said essentially she was doing well. She was, modeling. She was doing other things. And then they kind of touched base a little bit about her prior relationship even before Diddy, and that was with a producer named Ryan Leslie. And around this time frame, because Cassie was still in a relationship with Ryan, at this time the defense was trying to paint it as, when you had met Ryan, he was 10 years older than you at this point of time. And I had kind of looked it up. Diddy and Ryan Leslie aren't necessarily close in age. I think Ryan Leslie's still in his mid-40s, whereas Diddy's in his mid-50s. So there's a little bit there, but I could kind of see where the defense was trying to go and trying to paint it as that you kind of get with older producers, with older men, and that could possibly kind of help you with your career. Then we saw an email from 2007 where Cassie had wrote, we really had 1 week of each other just together, and I can say it's been the best and the worst. The defense asked her about her relationship with Diddy. Has it always been complicated? And she kind of affirmed that a little bit. She said she thought Diddy at first was actually more interested in her friend Carrie Morgan, somebody that's been brought up a number of times during the testimony. And so as far as a lot of these messages, part of it, when I was sitting inside the gallery today, I was kind of like, where is this going? You know, they were just reading text after text after text. It was bunches of pages, to the point I think the judge was kind of like, why are we, we need to find like a better system of getting Cassie to read these messages so that way there's not a holdup, because it was just so much messages to the point where sometimes you were trying to connect the dots and wondering what's happening. And so the presentation was a little messy on my end, at least from what I could see, that I was just kind of like, where is this going? And there were just so many points that I felt like they could talk about instead of these messages, but it seemed like they wanted to get in front of these messages, provide context that Cassie was actually in love, that at times that she had set up these freak-offs even on her own, at times when even Diddy was sick. And so these messages were just all over the place, and at points I was just kind of like, where is this going? Because it really was so much. So I don't know how the jury felt listening to all of these today too.
Well, I'll tell you, it seemed to me they were really trying to home in on the idea that she was a willing participant in the freak-offs, and that the jury, are you really going to believe that she was essentially held captive against her will, didn't want to do any of this for years because she was under threat or coercion of Sean Combs, and highlighting messages like, I'm always ready to freak off, LOL, or baby, I want to FO so bad, you know, that's going to help their narrative, and you know, saying she was the one who tried to set these up, or I believe there was testimony she heated up the baby oil to be used in freak-offs. But there's a part of something that you said that I thought was really interesting, where it seems to me the defense was also trying to portray her as a jealous lover, right? And go to her motivations about why she would be going after Diddy now. Talk to us about what we learned today from the cross-examination about how they tried to portray her, maybe with other interests that she had, other relationships Diddy had. How did they try to portray her as somebody who was jealous and maybe had other motives for coming after, you know, accusing Diddy now?
Well, they definitely brought up Kim Porter a couple of times today. Kim Porter is a big name because she is the mother of a few of Diddy's children, including the twins, including Christian. And so Cassie had said that she had learned that Diddy had actually left the freak off to go see Kim Porter. Again, by this time, she was still the mother of his children. She admitted to being a little bit jealous of Diddy's relationship with Kim, and she said especially this kind of happened during the holiday time, because Diddy always spent the holidays with Kim Porter, with his children, something that, you know, surprisingly, Cassie kind of mentioned that Diddy and Cassie didn't spend much time together with his children. Instead, the children were always with Kim Porter, and this was something that she was a little bit jealous of, that she wanted to be around him and see she wanted to be around him, be around his family and get all parts of him. And so, you know, she did admit that she was a little jealous. We learned about Gina today. Gina is another central figure a little bit, and I've done a couple segments about Gina because Gina had previously gone on a podcast and spoken with a blogger talking about how her relationship with Diddy was, where she had alleged that Diddy was physically abusive with Gina. She had alleged that Diddy would refer to Cassie as the good one and Gina was the bad one. So for hearing from Cassie's perspective about the whole Gina situation, Gina was somebody that Gina was somebody that Diddy had seen while he was still with Cassie, somebody that was a focal point of, from her perspective, of the jealousy. And so Cassie had learned that Diddy was seeing Gina. Cassie learned about this because of social media, and she
I've had metal fences and wood fences. The metal fences would require painting every couple of years.
And no matter what you do with a wooden fence, it's gonna look bad almost immediately.
And it didn't quite match the style of the house since we just built a new house.
And was looking for a very nice upscale fence that we could put around the project that was low maintenance. And we came across Sleek Fence and decided to reach out to the company to entertain the thoughts of putting it around the neighborhood. Another factor we looked at was the ease of installation of the project.
I'm an amateur and I had a helper
and we knocked this all out in 2 or 3 days by ourselves. It was actually pretty easy.
Very, very happy with it. Simple product, easy to clean, and it looks great.
I would say if I had to do it again, 110%, 150%, I would do it again.
The slats are so clean and sleek, and it looks fantastic. I would definitely recommend Sleek Fence for someone who wanted a modern design with a fence that was going to be durable over the years.
We were really glad that we went with this product, and we feel
He said that Diddy initially denied seeing Gina, but learned that he was still seeing her during a point where she had told him to stop seeing her. And she called Gina actually a main problem in their relationship. And so this was around the 2013 timeframe where Cassie said to Diddy, "You make me feel like a side piece. I'm happy with you no matter what," because Cassie thought she was the main girlfriend. She thought she was the only girlfriend. She didn't realize that he was seeing other people. She said that, not even surprisingly, she said that he had actually lost his temper when Diddy thought Cassie was cheating, but then when Cassie confronted Diddy about his cheating, it was like, deny, deny, deny. Another point of contention between their relationship was that, the two were on and off for an 11-year period. Cassie says that Diddy learned that she was seeing other people, and she said that it would get scary if he would find out these situations and then enter and segue into Kid Cudi. Surprisingly, they didn't talk about the car arson at all today through it, but it was essentially to kind of talk about how Diddy was just so hurt and just so devastated by the fact that Cassie was seeing Kid Cudi behind his back. The defense was trying to point out that Diddy was the one who actually introduced Cassie and Kid Cudi to one another because he was trying to get them in the studio together to pretty much kind of advance her career. And this was around the 2011 time frame. Diddy found out about Cassie and Kid Cudi, and she had said yesterday under direct examination that he had found out while they were in a freak-off. Cassie says it was actually her idea to use a burner phone because she didn't want Diddy to find out, again alluding to the fact that she was a little terrified and scared of what he could do, how he would respond. And she said that she began her relationship with Kid Cudi at a point where she and Diddy were actually off. They were on a break, but she began a relationship with Kid Cudi because the two were just enjoying each other's company. She said that she did admit that she was still doing freak-offs during this off period with Diddy, but then she would kind of go and hang out with Kid Cudi. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, she and Diddy are still on a break, and she again said that it was scary if he had found out. She was asked if Diddy knew that Cassie and Diddy were on a break, and she said that, "I don't know." And then that's when the cross got a little awkward because they were trying to kind of figure out a way to kind of ask these questions. And I had mentioned this during the lunch hour today that it was just a little weird to kind of see this cross-examination around this point because Esteban was essentially just kind of adding or concurring with Tenny Garagos, who was sitting at the defense table. I think a lot of us were kind of questioning why Esteban was the one doing the line of questioning. We understand obviously that the defense was going to use a female to ask Cassie these questions under cross, but I was just kind of like, why is she conferring so much? It seemed like she didn't know what to ask next, and so that was an interesting point that I had seen while in the courtroom today. As far as just the Kid Cudi relationship goes, I mentioned this just yesterday that when Diddy had found out, he got a bottle or a wine bottle opener, put it in between her finger, it's in between his fingers, and lunged at her. But Cassie said that he had made no contact when he had lunged at her with the bottle opener. She said her relationship with Kid Cudi the entire time was just about a month, and she got back together with Diddy. She was asked, was the relationship offensive to Diddy because of Kid Cudi's stature in the music industry? And Cassie was kind of like, well, yeah, because Diddy wasn't cheating with other celebrities. And Cassie responded, I don't really know. The Kid Cudi relationship hurt Diddy, according to the defense, because Diddy was the one who introduced them, put them in the studio together. And so the defense was saying that Diddy brought up Kid Cudi a lot after they got back together, and he especially would become angry over the holidays, recalling the Kid Cudi relationship because this was around the Christmas time frame of 2011. Cassie had mentioned by New Year's the two being Kid Cudi and Cassie were already broken up. Diddy accused Cassie of having another relationship with another man while shooting a movie, and that movie was Honey 3, and this was in South Africa. I bring back the people and places list that was talked about during jury selection. Why? Because this was when Michael B. Jordan was named, and Diddy was apparently a little annoyed by the relationship that Cassie and Michael B. Jordan were having together while they were shooting this movie. And Cassie had even said around this time that she and Diddy weren't even together when she went off to shot the movie. She broke things off. Why? Because she had seen a picture that he was still with Gina. She was sent a video about that while Diddy and Gina were seen at Revolt Fest together, because somebody thought that that was actually Cassie. And so Cassie had sent kind of a nasty...
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house, no matter what condition it's in. If you need to sell your house for any reason, click the button under this video to see if my offer is right for you. We make the process of selling your house easy and simple. No commissions, no fees. We'll buy your house in as-is condition, and you pick the closing date. No appraisals, no repairs, no hassles. All offers are completely confidential, and there is no obligation whatsoever. Click the button below this video and fill out a short survey so we can make you a cash offer today. If you're struggling to sell your house, this is the fastest and easiest way to get money into your pocket ASAP. Yes, we will really buy your home in any condition. We've dealt with it all. Click the link now to see how much cash you can get for your house today. Best case scenario, you get rid of a huge pain in record time with a nice chunk of change in your pocket. What do you have to lose?
message to Diddy's entire staff that she thought were family, staff that she had thought had her back. But then when seeing these pictures, knowing that this was a point of contention in their relationship, she said she got upset about it because she thought the staff was her family and thought they were kind of in on this. And so those were a lot of the focus of just the other people who kind of played a role into just the tension that was displayed in the relationship between Cassie and Diddy.
And yeah, they questioned, it seemed to me, a lot of her motivations. They brought up the November 2023 lawsuit to suggest you knew this was going to ruin his career, right? Now, there was a large section of the testimony regarding drug use. And I couldn't tell if it was to suggest that, hey, Combs isn't responsible for your drug use. You know, one of the things he's charged with, right, is alleged he used drugs to make victims more compliant, drug trafficking, one of the underlying crimes of racketeering. And I'm curious how they had that whole conversation regarding drugs. Was it just to suggest, you know, she had a drug issue herself that was her own problem? Or was it also to suggest, hey, he had a drug problem, and that explains a lot of his behavior, which, if I understood it correctly, is interesting because I'm not sure I quite understood where they were going with that. I have an idea of where they were going with that, maybe to explain away some of his actions that they originally said were indefensible. So talk to us about what we know about all the drug use. What was the conversation about that? What was she questioned about?
Now, the drug use was also pretty prominent, especially during the afternoon portion. She was questioned, and I feel like the questioning along the lines, to your point, Jesse, was trying to paint her out to be kind of this drug-addicted person during the time frame. They were questioning her. Did she use drugs when she was with Diddy? Did she use drugs without Diddy? Did she use drugs when she was with her friends? Oh, do you not remember these questions or these answers because you were addicted to drugs around that time period? And so there was a point where Cassie had said that there was a time that Diddy didn't want Cassie to do drugs, even though she still was, or even though that Diddy still was. The defense says Diddy didn't want you hanging out with a certain friend. The friend's name was Bonna. Bonna is also a pretty important name into this story. I had covered her when she had filed her civil claim against Diddy. Bono was allegedly hung outside of a balcony by Diddy when he was going through a rage period, something that Cassie had talked about in her direct testimony to yesterday. The defense was trying to say, well, you and Bono, you guys did a lot of drugs together, and Cassie at this time was saying, you know, she was doing opioids. Meanwhile, Bono, according to Cassie, provided these drugs like opioids. Meanwhile, Bono did cocaine, according to Cassie. Cassie had said that Diddy was pretty explosive when he found out that Cassie was taking his drugs, and Diddy had actually contacted drug dealers not to give drugs to Cassie at this point. The defense was trying to paint it out that Diddy was just worried about her health and that she was taking a lot of drugs including ketamine, GHB, MDMA, ecstasy. They talked about the Cannes Film Festival trip where Diddy had squeezed Cassie's leg so hard that a bruise appeared on her whenever she was taking pictures on red carpets, and he had squeezed her leg so hard, according to Cassie, because she had taken drugs from him. And then there was an interesting point that was talked about is in 2013, where the defense was saying that Diddy overdosed on drugs after a freak-off. Diddy was hosting a party at a Playboy mansion. Cassie had to actually take him into the hospital, and that's when Cassie had learned that he had overdosed. There were a lot of points just throughout her testimony today where, again, the defense was trying to ask, do you remember when this happened? And she would respond, I don't necessarily recall. And then the defense would ask, is it because you were on drugs during this period? And she was very forthcoming. You know, I did have a problem. She did try to seek out help a couple of times, and then she just kind of went back to, again, that same kind of lifestyle. But to her point, during her direct testimony, she was saying that she used these drugs to cope with just having to do these hundreds and hundreds of freak-offs, some that would last for days at a time, some that could last for a long period of time. But I thought it was interesting, the whole drug conversation today, mainly because they even discussed withdrawing from drugs, especially because of the amount of drugs that both Cassie and both Diddy were taking, and even kind of insinuating that the reason that everything had happened at the 2016 happened at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016 was because just a few days earlier than that, Diddy was sick, and they were saying
We've got about 50 million followers. We're in the billions of views, and we're a small team. We always felt like our content was all about entertainment and being fun, but there was also this, sort of professional business side. One of the things that we knew was basically essential was getting our own website, so people would actually see a proper official group who mean business and who can deliver. We always had this vision of bringing things into existence that previously had never been seen.
This is the world's largest act.
We bounced a plane and a boat and a car, and we now...
The defense was trying to paint it as Diddy was sick because he was going through withdrawals, and that made him agitated, that made him irritated. Meanwhile, at the same point, they were trying to say Cassie was insinuating doing these freak-offs, kind of making it seem like she was asking for what had happened to her as far as just him being so aggressive and violent with her, because again, we've all seen that surveillance video, but I definitely think the defense was trying to paint it as Diddy was going through withdrawals at this point, and that's why he became agitated and irritated, and that's why he had attacked her on that day, as something that, it shocked everyone when we had seen that video. Still shocking seeing it inside that courtroom. They didn't show it today during the cross-examination, but they definitely were talking about the 2016 incident, especially towards the end of the day today.
Yeah, I don't quite buy that one, right? The idea he was going through withdrawal kind of explains what happened in 2016. Didn't you say in the opening statement that video was indefensible? I feel like they might have stretched a little bit too much there. But look, the text messages, the conversations, communications, not ideal for a prosecution case. Not the end of the case, but not ideal for a prosecution case. So it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of how much the cross-examination helped the defense. I will say, I thought it was interesting, real quick on this, Elizabeth. Didn't they say, hey, you know how the prosecution was insinuating Diddy had all control over every aspect of her life, including her appearance? Well, the defense, didn't they seem to suggest, no, there might have been legitimate feedback he was giving, right?
Yeah, definitely. They were trying to paint Diddy kind of talking about his stature within the industry, essentially saying that, Diddy was somebody who had a lot of reign in terms of the culture. A lot of people sought out his advice. A lot of people went to him for fashion advice. So they were trying to make it seem that, Cassie, from her perspective, was saying that Diddy controlled every single aspect and manipulated every single aspect of her entire life. Meanwhile, the defense was trying to say, look, it wasn't just you going to Diddy for fashion advice. It was other people who were interested in taking fashion advice from him because, again, of just how big his stature was at the time. They were saying that he did so much for the culture and that he, started a line like the Sean John line, and that was a very popular fashion line. And so the defense was, again, trying to make it seem that this wasn't manipulation. He didn't control what you wore, but you would ask him, do I look good in this? What do you think of this outfit? And so, yes, to your point, Jesse, the defense was definitely trying to poke those holes into where they needed to poke them to kind of make the argument that this wasn't manipulation, this wasn't coercion, and this was something that two people just do normally in a relationship together.
So that brings us now to scheduling, right? So we are not done with the cross-examination. It's going to continue tomorrow, but Judge Arun Subramanian not happy about this, right? So two things I want to end on here. Talk to us about what the whole conversation was in court about actually scheduling Cassandra Ventura's testimony. And I believe we may have an answer as to who is going to be the next witness, who is a major witness in this case. Talk to us about it.
I definitely think so. So during the lunch hour, I was talking about how the defense was saying that they needed an entire day of more cross-examination to a point that they could carry this all the way out into Monday. This was something that the government was visibly annoyed about because they were like, we had this scheduling talks for weeks, not even just weeks, but months. And they were trying to make the argument, they being the government, that they had known all along that Cassie needed to be off the stand by the end of the week. So they didn't appreciate that the defense was trying to drag this over into Monday. And so they came up with a solution, essentially, and just that they believe that the cross-examination beginning tomorrow will take up half the day, should wrap around the lunch hour. So still a few more hours of cross-examination to go through. As far as the redirect goes, the government affirmed today that the redirect may take no more than about 30 minutes or less. And so it looks like Cassie will finally be off the stand tomorrow if everything goes as planned. You just never know sometimes with the trial how long that these things can go. But yes, another big witness is being teed up kind of as we speak, and the government asked today, do we even need to bring in other witnesses tomorrow being Friday? And the judge was like, yes, get your other witnesses ready. And one of those big witnesses I could definitely say is going to be Don Richard, somebody who had filed civil claims against Diddy, somebody who had worked with Diddy for a number of years. She had worked with him for not even a number of years, for decades even. Somebody that Diddy himself, when the civil suit was filed, called her a friend and essentially said that he was disappointed that she had even...
Durably built for the long haul. Technology that holds hills and slopes up to 20 degrees. For a cut that takes your lawn to new heights.
What if, when uncertainty is high, heck, when chaos is high, it
filed this civil claim against him? And so the prosecution said today that she would be one of the next witnesses to be testifying against Diddy. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that'll all play out. And so she should be one of the next witnesses. If she's not directly after Cassie, she'll be the following witness for sure.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, I don't know if you have the answer to this. I'm not entirely sure. Is Dawn Richard one of the named alleged victims in this case? I say named. They're all using pseudonyms, except for Cassandra Ventura, maybe one other. Do we know if she's one of the alleged victims in this case that makes up sex trafficking or racketeering or anything like that?
I'm not necessarily sure, and that's mainly because when the prosecution was giving their opening statements, they had talked about the alleged victims, one being Cassie, one being Jane, that we presume to be alleged victim number 2, and then they were even talking about Mia, somebody who had worked for Diddy for a while, somebody that, according to the prosecution, Diddy allegedly sexually assaulted this sexually assaulted Via while the two had worked together because she was somebody on her staff. So I'm not entirely sure if John Richard is one of the victims that have been talked about, especially in the superseding indictment, but I definitely think she'll also be a very key witness in kind of piecing together her decades-long friendship that she had with Diddy, as well as just kind of how he was even just in a business aspect and a professional aspect as well too.
And I think she was a witness to some of the allegations of Cassandra Ventura. And if I'm right about that, that goes to further corroboration. So it's not just the security guard who testified, it's not just the male performer who testified. Now you'd have Dawn Richard, who I think I'm right? I think she had testified, I think she had alleged before that she witnessed alleged abuse of Cassie at the hands of Sean Combs.
Yep. Yeah, she did. In her civil claim, she alleged that she had seen Cassie with visible injuries on herself. She had said to Cassie that, according to her civil claim, that she had just wanted Cassie to be safe, essentially. She had said that she saw one instance where she was at Diddy's home. Cassie was cooking breakfast and Diddy threw a hot frying pan at her head. And so I definitely think she will be another central figure in kind of verifying Cassie's claims, especially the physical abuse that she endured. Not so much, I believe, about, the freak-offs and that extent, but definitely.
All right, guys, that's Jesse Weber from Sidebar. I'm gonna stop that right there. You guys head over to this is on Law and Crime Network, so head over there, Jesse Weber Sidebar. Shout out to him. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to start. You know what? I think I'm actually gonna save Bill for tomorrow as well, just because there's not a whole lot going on right now tonight in the chat. I think YouTube is mad at me from yesterday. Yesterday was pretty lit. Shout out to you guys. We had like 65 in the chat, holding at one point. I think by the time we finished the live stream, I had like 4,765 views. And I was like, whoa. Like, I was pretty blown away for that to be a Wednesday night, late night. So, I see tonight is going a little slower. And that's okay. I'm cool with that. My wife's already waiting for me to hurry up. So we're going to go ahead and watch something about Pope Leo XIV's first homily. Shout out to Capturing Christianity. Let's take a look.
Pope Leo XIV's first homily as Pope was absolutely beautiful. This video is going to be very simple. We're just going to walk through his homily. I'm not going to provide as much commentary as I normally would, just because this was so beautiful. I want you guys to experience this. So the first part of his homily, if you weren't aware, is in English, and the rest is in Italian. So the first part I'm going to play for you guys in English, and then the rest I'm just going to read in English from Italian. So let's just go ahead and begin.
I begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian. But I want to repeat the words from the responsorial psalm. I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And indeed, not just with me, but with all of us, my brother cardinals, as we celebrate this morning, I invite you to recognize the marvels that the Lord has done, the blessings that the Lord continues to pour out upon all of us. Through the ministry of Peter.
I grew up here, and so did a lot of the girls working the avenue today.
Over the past several days, 3 females have been found dead.
Looks like someone's going after these girls. It's our job to protect them.
Why are you looking into this? You're not the trouble cop, not a detective.
I'm worried about what...
You have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel.
Before we get to the Italian portion of his homily, I just wanted to highlight the humility that I'm seeing and experiencing and witnessing here from Pope Leo XIV. He's saying, he's got a cross to bear. The papacy, being Pope, is not an easy thing. It is a cross, and he's openly acknowledging that, and it's beautiful. But let's go ahead and jump into the Italian portion of his homily. "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," Matthew 16:16. In these words, Peter, asked by the Master, together with the other disciples, about his faith in him, expressed the patrimony that the Church, through the apostolic succession, had preserved, deepened, and handed on for 2,000 years. Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the one Savior, who alone reveals the face of the Father. In him, God, in order to make himself close and accessible to men and women, revealed himself to us in the trusting eyes of a child, in the lively mind of a young person, and in the mature features of a man, finally appearing to his disciples after the resurrection with his glorious body. He thus showed us a model of human holiness that we can all imitate, together with the promise of an eternal destiny that transcends all our limits and abilities. Peter, in his response, understands both of these things: the gift of God and the path to follow in order to allow himself to be changed by that gift. They are two inseparable aspects of salvation entrusted to the Church to be proclaimed for the good of the human race. Indeed, they are entrusted to us, who were chosen by him before we were formed in our mother's wombs. See Jeremiah 1:5. Reborn in the waters of baptism and surpassing our limitations and with no merit of our own, brought here and sent forth from here, so that the gospel might be proclaimed to every creature. See Mark 16:15. In a particular way, God has called me by your election to succeed the Prince of the Apostles, and has entrusted this treasure to me so that with his help I may be its faithful administrator, for the sake of the entire mystical body of the Church. He has done so in order that she may be ever more fully a city set on a hill, an ark of salvation sailing through the waters of history, and a beacon that illuminates the dark nights of this world. And this, not so much through the magnificence of her structures or the grandeur of her buildings, like the monuments among which we find ourselves, but rather through the holiness of her members. For we are the people whom God has chosen as his own, so that we may declare the wonderful deeds of him who called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. Peter, however, makes his profession of faith in reply to a specific question. Who do people say that the Son of Man is? In Matthew 16:13. The question is not insignificant. It concerns an essential aspect of our ministry, namely, the world in which we live, with its limitations and its potential, its questions and its convictions. Who do people say that the Son of Man is? If we reflect on the scene we are considering, we might find two possible answers, which characterize two different attitudes. I love the clarifications he's giving here. First, there is the world's response. Matthew tells us that this conversation between Jesus and his disciples takes place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, filled with luxurious palaces, set in a magnificent natural landscape at the foot of Mount Hermon, but also a place of cruel power plays and the scene of betrayals and infidelity. This setting speaks to us of a world that considers Jesus a completely insignificant person. At best, someone with an unusual and striking way of speaking and acting. And so, once his presence becomes irksome because of his demands for honesty and his stern moral requirements, this world will not hesitate to reject and eliminate him. Then there is the other possible response to Jesus' question, that of ordinary people. For them, the Nazarene is not a charlatan, but an upright man, one who has courage, who speaks well and says the right things, like the other great prophets in the history of Israel. That is why they follow him, at least for as long as they can do so, without too much risk or inconvenience. Yet to them he is only a man, and therefore, in times of danger, during his passion, they too abandon him and depart disappointed. What is striking about these two attitudes is their relevance today. They embody notions that we could easily find in the lips of many men and women in our own time, even if, while essentially identical, they are expressed in different languages. Even today, there are many settings in which the Christian faith is considered absurd, meant for the weak and unintelligent, settings where other securities are preferred, like technology, money, success, power, or pleasure. These are contexts where it is not easy to preach the gospel and bear witness to its truth, where believers are mocked, opposed, despised, or at best tolerated and pitied. Yet, precisely for this reason, they are the places where our missionary outreach is desperately needed. A lack of faith is often tragically accompanied by the loss of meaning in life, the neglect of mercy, appalling violations of human dignity, the crisis of the family, and so many other wounds that afflict our society. And these are not a few. Today, too, there are many settings in which Jesus, although appreciated as a man, is reduced to a kind of charismatic leader or Superman. This is not true, not only among non-believers, but also among many baptized Christians, who thus end up living at this level in a state of practical atheism. This is the world that has been entrusted to us, a world in which, as Pope Francis taught us so many times, we are called to bear witness to our joyful faith in Jesus, the Savior. Therefore, it is essential that we, too, repeat with Peter, "You are Christ, the Son of the living God." It is essential to do this, first of all, in our personal relationship with the Lord, in our commitment to a daily journey of conversion. Then, to do so as a church, experiencing together our fidelity to the Lord and bringing the good news to all. I say this first of all to myself, as the successor of Peter, as I began my mission of Bishop of Rome, and according to the well-known expression of St. Ignatius of Antioch, who he thinks is a real person, am called to preside in charity over the universal church. St. Ignatius, who is led in chains to this city, the place of his impending sacrifice, wrote to the Christians there, "Then I will truly be a disciple of Jesus Christ when the world no longer sees my body." Ignatius was speaking about being devoured by wild beasts in the arena, and so it happened, but his words apply more generally to an indispensable commitment for all those in the church who exercise a ministry of authority. It is to move aside so that Christ may remain, to make oneself small so that he may be known and glorified, to spend oneself to the utmost so that all may have the opportunity to know and love him. May God grant me this grace today and always through the loving intercession of Mary, Mother of the Church.
Alright guys, I'm gonna wrap that up. Alright guys, so we got the Diddy trial. I'm gonna leave it with that because I wanted to watch day 4 because I said we would watch it every single day as it plays here on the channel. And then I wanted to end with Capturing Christianity. Pope Leo the 14th, his first homily, it was pretty beautiful. I would agree. I would agree with him. I loved it a lot. I was like, okay, I gotta admit, it was not something that I was expecting. I guess I expected to be not so full of humility. So
Pope Leo the
Cameron
14th's
has a
first
point
homily
there
as Pope,
when
what?
he says like he just wants to take the time to shout out the level of humility he sees there, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty beautiful there. Like even the stories he's telling, how much he refers to scripture, the accuracy he's doing it in. I loved it a lot. So great way to end the live stream. All right, guys. So with that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow for the live stream. Friday we will be on earlier than what we are today. We should be on tomorrow around I would say 5 p.m. So with that being said, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, be peaceful. Peace.